Hey everybody, so we are getting into 4.6, solve absolute value inequalities. Okay, before we do that though, I'm gonna have you guys try a warm up real quick on solving absolute value equations and see if you remember how to do that. Just to kind of get you started, if you guys remember these problems, once the absolute value is isolated, which it is on this one, you can go ahead and split it into the two equations and then solve both equations. Go ahead and see if you remember it. Okay, so on this, if you guys remember, what we're basically doing is we're taking what's inside the absolute value bars, setting it equal to a positive 2 and a negative 2, the positive and the negative of this number. So those are our two equations. So 3x minus 1 is going to equal a 2, or 3x minus 1 is going to equal a negative 2. Okay, from here we just solve and we have our two possible answers. So let's do this in our head because we're getting good at this. Adding a 1 to both sides looks like we're getting a 3x equals 3. Dividing both sides by 3 looks like x equals 1. Okay, over on this side, I'll put my little or sign. Adding 1 to both sides, it looks like we're getting 3x equals negative 1. Dividing both sides by 3 looks like x equals negative 1/3. Okay, and there are my two possible answers for this absolute value equation. All right, so today, we're getting into doing the same process, but with inequalities. Okay, so kind of smushing together the stuff we've been learning, all the stuff we've been learning from this chapter 4. All right, so yeah, let's just take a look at this. So here is my absolute value inequality. First thing to know, when we go to do these problems, we're going to be basically doing them exactly the same way as we would our equations. All right, so we're still going to isolate the absolute value first. If it's not already, break it into the two inequalities, solve them, and then we'll have to graph them because they're inequalities. Okay, so on this one, yeah, absolute value is already isolated on this side of the inequality, so I'm going to go ahead and break it into the two inequalities. Okay, it's still going to be x and a positive 3 and x and a negative 3. Okay, but here's the big thing. When I guess the less than sign, it's still going to be a less than for this one. Okay, but what I'm trying to say is when we turn this into a negative 3, okay, we have to also flip the inequality. Okay, so this one has to be flipped to a greater than sign. Okay, so you can just think of it as the second inequality that you do when you change it to a negative, you'll always just flip the sign. Okay, and these are already solved. They're good to go. The last thing we got to do is graph them. Okay, so yeah, we remember how to do this. This is x is less than 3. So add 3. I have an open circle. Less than goes to the left. This is x is greater than negative 3. So add negative 3. Open circle. Greater than goes to the right. And they're connecting. All right. And so, yeah, that's kind of, the process. The only thing that's going to happen is these inequalities are going to get more and more elaborate through this lesson, but it's still using all of these skills we've already learned. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so let's try one here that has a little bit more going on the inside. Go ahead and copy this. Okay, so yeah, first thing to notice, the absolute value is isolated. There's nothing on the outside of it is what I mean by isolated. So we can go ahead and split it into the two inequalities. Okay, one thing to always remember, what's inside the absolute value does not change when you write out your equations. This is still going to be a negative 2x minus 10 is greater than or equal to 14. Or a negative 2x minus 10. And remember, this turns into a negative 14, right? So that means we need to flip our inequality to a less than or equal to sign. Okay, now we can go ahead and solve these and graph them. So let's do some of this in our head. Add 10 to both sides. Negative 2x is greater than or equal to 24. Okay, I'm actually going to write this one out because if you guys remember, or if you notice, we have this negative 2 being multiplied. We know we need to divide by a negative 2, right? But if you guys remember, that's one of our rules to where we have to flip the inequality. If you ever multiply or divide by a negative number, we have to flip that inequality. Okay, so we get x is less than or equal to, looks like negative 12. Okay, over on this side, same idea. Let's do this first step in our head. Add 10 to both sides. negative 2x is less than or equal to negative 4. All right. Dividing by a negative 2, going to write it out just to remind us, okay, we divided by a negative number. We need to flip that inequality again. Okay, so we get x is greater than or equal to 2. Right. So there are our two inequalities. Now we just need to get them on a graph to represent them. Okay, go ahead and draw yourself a number line here. Okay, I'm not going to go too crazy on this thing. I'm going to put negative 12 over here, positive 2 over here, and just 0 just about here, just to give it some context. Okay, so let's see what happens. X is less than or equal to negative 12. Well, less than or equal to means it's a closed dot, less than going to the left. X is greater than or equal to positive 2. That means another closed dot, greater than goes to the right. Okay, so something I want to point out about the graphs that you've probably noticed, on the last one, they went towards one another. On this one, they're going away from one another, just like how we did when we had those compound inequalities. Okay, that's still the case. There's no way of knowing which of the two types you'll get until you finish, but just remember, you'll never see your inequalities going in the same direction. You'll never have two arrows both pointing to the right or two arrows both pointing to the left. That won't happen on these. If it does, double check, make sure you didn't forget to flip a sign somewhere. Okay, so I think I'm gonna have you guys try out one of these. Let me see. Yeah, a couple of them. So go ahead, try these out, make sure you get them on a graph. All right, so first one, pretty straightforward. Absolute values, again, already isolated. We can break it. So we got x is less than or equal to positive 2, or this is going to turn into a negative 2. That means we need to flip our inequality. Okay, and there it is, pretty quick, right? So let's go ahead and get this thing on a graph. Put my little arrows. Okay, so we got a positive 2. We have a negative 2. I'll put the 0 in the center. Okay, x is less than or equal to positive 2. Again, closed circle because of that equal to symbol, right? Less than goes to the left. I should assume this one's going to be going to the right, but always double check that it actually is. So greater than or equal to negative 2, going to the right. Okay, on this one, we can go ahead and split it into the two inequalities. Okay, negative 2w minus 1 is less than 11, or negative 2w minus 1 is greater than negative 11. All right, so let's do some of this in our head. Adding 1 to both sides, negative 2w is less than 12. Dividing by a negative 2. You can still do this in your head, I don't mind, but let's remember, we're flipping that inequality. You always do that first, it's easy to forget. Dividing by a negative 2, that means we're going to get w is greater than negative 6. Okay, over here, adding 1 to both sides, looks like we're getting negative 2w is greater than negative 10. Dividing by a negative number, I'm going to go ahead and remember, that means I'm flipping my sign. I'm getting w is less than positive 5. All right, if you like to show the steps, if you don't like this right here, I encourage you to show the steps. I just know we've been doing this so much. If you feel like it's kind of getting redundant as far as like, oh, plus 1 to both sides, plus 1 to both sides, you don't necessarily have to show that part. Okay, so let's see, we got a negative 6, we got a positive 5, putting 0 in the center. W is greater than negative 6, so open circle to the right, less than 5, open circle to the left. Okay, so just so happened both of these went towards one another. Okay, let's keep moving. All right, so let's look at problems that have, numbers on the outside of our absolute value. Go ahead and copy this and get the 2 steps here just to remind you. Okay, so step number 1, isolate the absolute value. On the last, few slides, they've all already been isolated. On these, they're not. Okay, so that's the first thing we got to do. After that, then we can split into the 2 inequalities just like we've been doing. Okay, so here's what I noticed. Negative 3 on the outside, it's being multiplied by my absolute value. I know to get rid of that, we're going to divide by a negative 3. Okay, both sides. Here's a big thing. I just divided by a negative. That means I need to flip my inequality. Really easy to forget that. Okay, so these are gone. I have my absolute value of negative 2x. Okay, don't forget the absolute value bars are not gone until we split into the two problems. Okay, over here it looks like we're getting a positive 6. Okay, now we can go ahead and split it into the two inequalities. Okay, it looks like I'm going to get a negative 2x is greater than positive 6, or negative 2x is less than negative 6. Okay, all right, moving on down. Now it looks like we just have one step on both of these, dividing by a negative 2. I'm going to show it on this. Just remember, divided by a negative, looks like we have to then flip this inequality again. Okay, so it's flipping back and forth on this. So easy to like miss one of these and just end up with the wrong inequalities at the end. So x is less than negative 3. Or same idea, dividing by that negative 2 means I need to flip this one again. And I'm getting x is greater than positive 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and graph it. All right, so negative 3 over here, positive 3 over here, 0 in the center. Okay, x is less than negative 3, open circle to the left, greater than positive 3, open circle to the right. Okay, if you missed some of this flip-flop in here, it would have been really easy to have these arrows going into one another, okay, and getting the problem wrong. So just be careful. Okay, so I'm gonna have you guys try one like this. Go ahead and try it out. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and go over this real quick. I don't want to make this all too long, so I'm going to go through this pretty fast. So dividing both sides by a negative 5. First thing I'm going to notice, divided by a negative, I'm flipping the inequality. Okay, so they're gone. Absolute value of 6x is less than 6. Now it's isolated. Now I can split into my two inequalities. Okay, I'm going to have a 6x is less than 6, or a 6x is greater than negative 6. Okay, and then dividing both sides. Here's a good question. I'm dividing by this 6. Do I need to flip my inequality? No. Okay, it's not a negative 6. I'm just dividing by a positive number. Inequality is not flipping. Same thing over here. I'm dividing by a positive 6. Inequality does not. Oh, wait, my bad. 6 goes into 6 one time. That's why maybe showing steps is sometimes helpful, especially when you're rushing like I am. Okay, I'm dividing by 6 over here at negative 1. Okay, so let's see. It looks like we've got our graph, our number line. We have a negative 1, a positive 1, 0 in the center. Okay, x is less than 1, open circle to the left. Greater than negative 1, open circle to the right. Okay, let's look at one more type of these. Let's look at one that has a bunch of, everything going on here. We have numbers on the outside. We got a bunch of things to do. So just remember, when we have multiple numbers on the outside, we got to get rid of both of them. We have to do them in the correct order, and we do it just like any other equation we would be solving. This 9 is being multiplied. We will eventually get rid of that, but we got to deal with addition or subtraction first. Okay, so we got to get rid of this minus 7 first by adding 7. Okay, so adding 7 to both sides here. Okay, so yeah, bringing down this 9 here, we have 9 times the absolute value of negative n plus 10, just bringing this stuff down. These are gone, no reason to flip the inequality. Looks like we got a 36. Okay, now we can get rid of this 9 being multiplied, so I'm going to divide. Okay, quick question, divided by 9, do I flip the inequality? No, okay, because I did not divide by a negative number, right? So they're gone, absolute value of negative n plus 10. Okay, inequality stays the same. 9 goes into 36, 4 times? All right, now my absolute value is isolated. Now I can break it into the two problems. Okay, so I've got a negative n plus 10 is greater than positive 4, or negative n plus 10 is less than negative 4. Okay, so let's do some of this on our head. Subtracting 10 from both sides, I have a negative n is greater than negative 6. Over here, same idea, subtracting 10 from both sides, negative n is less than negative 14. Okay, here's one thing. This negative n, technically this is a negative 1, right? So technically to get rid of it, we divide both sides by a negative 1. That means, yeah, we're flipping our inequality here. Okay, be careful with that. Normally when there's a negative n like that, like this, I would change this to a positive, and that means I would change the signs on the other side, but I would still have to remember to flip my inequality. Okay, so just be careful on that. So we got n is less than 6. Over here, same idea. I'm dividing by a negative 1. That means I'm flipping my inequality. N is greater than 14. Okay, so there they are. Let's get our number line. I'm just put off the side here. All right, so let's see, 6 and 14. Be careful, that means 0 would be somewhere over here, just to give us some context. Okay, n is less than 6, open circle to the left. N is greater than 14, open circle to the right. Okay, cool. So yeah, that is dealing with these absolute value inequalities. You can see we used almost every single thing we learned during chapter 4 here. So this is a good lesson. If you're feeling good on this, feel good about yourself. All right, cool. So if you have any questions, hop into the Google Meet. I'll see you guys.